Right, so following on from the Houthis in Yemen effectively implementing sanctions against Israel by blockading the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait to all Israeli shipping traffic, triggering Western countries not to put pressure on Israel to stop bombing Gaza, as Yemen is demanding, but instead puts together a cabal of empathy-deficient, morally stunted nations to defend Israeli shipping instead, with Yemen effectively saying to them, bring it on. But another country has imposed its own sanctions too against Israel as of today for their indiscriminate bombing of Gaza and the killing of so many civilians. It is a bit of a twisted irony, isn't it, that at this time of year, when many of us will soon be celebrating the birth of a baby in the Middle East, our leaders, or many of them in the West, are going above and beyond to protect a country that has so far killed 10,000 innocent children, as if that is the right and just thing to do. Well, Malaysia might not be in the same part of the world as Israel, and its actions might be viewed as somewhat symbolic, but it is at least coming down on the right side of common sense, and once more the effectiveness of sanctions as a way to leverage nations into better behaviour becomes abundantly apparent. Right, so those brave Houthis, they do not give a shit what threats are coming from Western nations right now. Biden, Genocide Joe, threatening to hit them with the missiles as they cause chaos in one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world because they can. The Bab-el-Mandeb Strait in the south of the Red Sea, which leads up to the Suez Canal in the north, is right on their coastline. This 16-mile at its narrowest stretch of water, which carries 12% of the world's shipping. And this is causing a great deal of hilarity amongst those who have been observing the Houthi tactics, which chiefly involve drone strikes and harassing ships with little speedboats. 4 of these speedboats notably able to hold up a US aircraft carrier, which is hilarious in and of itself. So now the US are going in, it would seem, with missiles to take on the drones. Well, that might seem like a little bit of overkill, but when you consider the drones used are nothing special, it's what Yemen could get hold of, just a few $1,000s, and the US naval missiles come in at an eye-watering $2.1 million each. Those are some very expensive drones for the US to take pot shots at. And let's face it, the drones are easily replaceable, far more so than the missiles are. Now, if the West are entering the fray just to save Israeli import and exports, we can think of them as, well, let's imagine they are the lions of this picture. Then the Houthis, I suppose, are analogous to the honey badgers, not giving a damn and biting the lion's collective nuts off right now. Anyway, this isn't a vid on the Yemenis. I did that one yesterday. This is about Malaysia, who have now imposed their own sanctions on Israel. Malaysia is another Muslim-majority country, showing solidarity with another in Palestine, and Malaysia has been a vocal supporter of Palestine globally, where we in the West, unless it's a story spoken in a pro-Israel narrative, don't warrant anything like the same mention. That worm has well and truly turned in recent weeks, though. Malaysia also, notably, do not maintain diplomatic relationships with Israel, yet they do with Palestine, and has also, like much of the West, though Malaysia at least seems committed to actually seeing it happen, been a long-time supporter of a two-state solution, and have contributed millions in aid to Gaza since October 7th. Therefore, it's not completely unexpected that Malaysia do something here and again like they are. They're taking it out on Israeli shipping, though, exactly as Yemen have, because Yemen have shown the effectiveness of hindering Israeli sea trade. So Malaysia is going to do likewise by banning any ships flying an Israeli flag from any of its numerous seaports. It is blocking any ships bound for Israel from loading cargo at its ports as well, and it's also blocking all vessels owned by the Israeli-based shipping company Zim Integrated Shipping Services from anchoring in Malaysian ports. Functionally, Israel and anyone delivering to Israel is banned from Malaysia. Now, this will be most effective against trade heading west to Israel from the east. However, with alternatives available, other ports, the move is largely seen as a symbolic one, not one that will hinder Israel too much in and of itself, but it is the thought that counts. Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim issued a statement earlier today saying that the ban comes into immediate effect, and he said, "These sanctions are a response to Israel's actions ignoring the basic principles of humanity and breaking the international law through continued massacres and atrocities against Palestinians." He is, of course, absolutely right. I totally associate myself with those remarks. Now, the reason all of this is so effective in hurting Israel economically is that despite having all of these land borders and connections with other countries as Israel has, they really don't get on with most of them. That's an historic thing going back to 1948, so a great deal of this nation's prosperity is thanks to sea trade with other countries further afield. One of the key reasons many think Israel is planning to take over Gaza is their plans for another canal running through Gaza to effectively steal the transport links to the Mediterranean from Egypt by having a bigger and better version of the Suez Canal. But as well and good as that idea might be, unless you can get around Yemen blockading the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait, your big fat spanking new canal wouldn't amount to a hill of beans. If there was a country I'd love to see follow suit right now after Malaysia's, let's call it symbolic ban, but it should be treated as more than that, of Israeli shipping and Yemen's extremely effective closure of the Red Sea to Israeli shipping, I would pick South Africa. With Israeli shipping unable to access the Red Sea to sail north of the port of Eilat in Israel, they are now having to use the old pre-Suez Canal shipping routes, which takes ships all the way around Cape Horn in South Africa, up the Atlantic and enter the Mediterranean from the Gibraltar end. Actually, another good shout for another blockade would indeed be the Strait of Gibraltar, which is even narrower than Bab-el-Mandeb is. Morocco is another Muslim state after all. Wouldn't they get on board with this? Unfortunately, I wouldn't get too excited in that instance, given that Israel has recognised Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara, which is another occupied territory, alas. So would appear to be in a bit of a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours mindset with Israel. But South Africa, historically, was the stopping point for all shipping before the Suez Canal was built. And with Israeli shipping having to travel that way these days now because of Yemen, imagine how effective South Africa doing what Malaysia had done could be. For the record, South Africa is not on the side of Israel in this, describing the Israeli response to October 7th as this real crime against humanity. South Africa have closed their embassy in Tel Aviv, called on the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu, and following that, Netanyahu recalled Israel's ambassador from South Africa as well. Could they go further and impose sanctions against Israeli shipping as well? Well, it doesn't seem beyond reason to me. Is there anywhere else Israel could be docking at instead of South Africa? Kenya, Tanzania and Mozambique on the African east coast all have docking options, but where Israeli shipping is now apparently travelling around Madagascar, they would have to divert inside Madagascar, if you will, between Madagascar and the East African coast in order to access those other countries' ports. And that would cost them more time and more money, and the docking there at the end of the day is nothing like on the scale of South Africa anyway. Sanctioning Israeli shipping by more countries like Yemen and Malaysia have done really could be the answer to hurting them economically enough to end this genocide, which at the end of the day is all it would take for these blockades to be lifted by Yemen. And the West, as pro-Israeli as they are, wouldn't be needed to implement this either. Certainly worth thinking about for a few nations, I would imagine. And if you want to know more about what those plucky Houthis in Yemen have been doing to vex Israeli shipping, you ought to watch this vid here next, and I will catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.